Hello.
Morning.
Hello. Good morning. Morning.
Morning.
There we go. You're all right. Good to start. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Resurgence 25X. We haven't had the ideal start to the new year, so a positive event like this will do us all a lot of good, I think. We're delighted to have been asked to this event by Dr. Fearghal O'Neill of ATPO, whose business experience, whose business experience is broad and varied. Now, as I said, we haven't had a great start to the year. We haven't had a great start to this event either. And Fearghal's internet connection just dropped completely about 5 minutes ago. So we're going in a wing and a prayer that we'll be able to proceed. So we'll do the best that we can. Fearghal has joined us as a leader on this year's Regional Leaders Programme. And while this event is not part of our offering, I know, but I'm delighted that he's here. We'll be joined by we're joined by many of the participants from the Regional Leaders Programme today, and I'm delighted to see you there. Fearghal, he's a huge asset to the Regional Leaders Programme, and his positivity, innovation, and commitment is contagious. But you'll figure that out for yourself before the end of this morning's event. The objective of today is to share, magnify, multiply the ideas and opportunities for a resurgence in Ireland that can be adopted now and show fruit in 2025. This is certainly timely, as we ourselves are currently working on a review of the National Development Plan, where we're identifying important deliverables for Waterford in the short, medium, and long term, and the region. That's for Waterford and the region over the next number of years. So it's really time to look forward, and today will give us that opportunity to do that. We have also guest speakers, and they'll give their perspective on Resurgence based on their knowledge, experience, and ideas for our recovery from COVID-19 over the next few years. And I'd like to thank Gary Graham from Bord Bia, David Mcnamara from EY, Mary Boland of Theatre Royal, Michael Kelly, GIY, Sean Brady from Microsoft Teams, Cloud Assist, for all being here with us today. Finally, as always, can I reiterate that we're here to support you in any way that we can. So please feel free to reach out to us. And in the meantime, please stay safe, wash your hands, and stay indoors as much as you can. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Fearghal and Linda. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Gerald, and hopefully Fearghal has connected again with us.
I think I have. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it. Go while you can.
I'll go where I can. Major crisis to start. That's the way it goes. We're hoping to do quite a lot today. Gerald, thanks for that welcoming address, and he's really got a point across. We're just to start. Brian is going to take you through some housekeeping pieces, because it's kind of important that you're going to be able to engage with us really well. So Brian, I'll just pass you back to Brian for just a second for a quick rundown.
Hi there. Thank you very much, Fearghal. Hi there, everybody. So in this session, there's going to be interaction, as Fearghal said. There's also going to be breakout rooms. So if you do need to speak, on the bottom left, there is a unmute button that you should be able to see. You can also turn on off your video, but the microphone is the more important bit. When I do put you into breakout rooms, what's going to happen is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. A blue button will appear on your screen. You'll have to click that blue button saying enter the room, otherwise you won't go in. When the time's up, you'll be automatically pulled out of the room back into the lobby with the rest of us. That's perfect. All right.
Thanks, Brian. In a moment, I'm just going to talk about my ideas around mindset and the importance of mindset and momentum. for getting out of this COVID mess that we're in successfully. But I want to get into an activity straight away, because the point of this day is for you to network and to meet people as quickly as possible and to get ideas and to move these ideas around. So we're going to do a kind of a pairing idea straight away. And the idea is you just introduce yourself to whoever you're paired up with and share your hopes and thoughts for today. It's a 2-minute exercise, so I'll hand you back to Brian again.
Perfect. So just 2 seconds there. So we've got 41 participants. We're going to need about 20 breakout rooms. Is that all right for you, Fearghal?
Perfect. Perfect.
So I'm going to create.
These would be pair up. We're just going to pair up for 2 minutes on this.
There we go.
Hi, Fearghal.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
Good. Now, Sean, we'll be talking. I'll be talking. We're going to start with your video, which we'll be throwing on in a moment, Sean. So,
Okay.
Good to see you. And
good to see you too. It's been obviously it's been a while since we actually met back in Waterford.
That's right. That's right. That's a long while ago. Okay, I think Brian, are we nearly ready for me to?
Oh, you are. Yeah. They're all flying into the room now.
Okay. You want to give me when I'll start?
You can start again there. Yep.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and good to see you back again. I hope that's warmed you up in this kind of a dreary morning here in Waterford, but it might be good wherever you are. I'm just going to talk about two things, mindset and momentum shift, for a few moments before we get into the contributions from our speakers. So mindset, when I talk about mindset, I'm talking about an attitude to a situation or a problem. And unfortunately, with COVID, it's had a very negative impact on a lot of mindsets for a lot of people. And the problem with a negative mindset, it can lead to more negative outcomes. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of ways to kind of move that mindset into positive. There are so many ways, but I'll just talk about two. One is have a detox, very good at this time of the year anyway. And what I'm talking about there, ideally, is minimizing the amount of time you spend on social media, because it can have a very negative impact on mindset, and minimize the amount of time you spend with those that leave you feeling less than energized. Now, obviously, in our lives, we have all sorts of people we know and we have to look after, etc. But if we can minimize those who kind of drain us a bit, it's actually better for the old mindset. The second one is kind of talk with others like yourself. Now, the vast majority of you who've come on have gone to the trouble of coming on, which would suggest that you have a mindset that wants to look for new ways of tackling old, current, and future problems, that kind of an idea. And so talking with others like yourself is always a very good way of kind of improving the old mindset. Now, once you have that mindset kind of into positive, what I'm going to talk about now is just a little bit about momentum. COVID, again, has had a very negative impact on momentum for a lot of businesses, organizations. Some of them have just stopped and no momentum at all. But if you can work back at your positive mindset, the idea would be that you can begin to gain momentum again, and then hopefully move into a kind of situation where it shifts into a kind of an unstoppable momentum. I just have a few ideas on the momentum, moving that around. The first one, a lot of you may know about it. It's this type of thing, but it actually is incredibly effective. And the idea really is, if you can think of the most wonderful, incredible, fantastic thing that you might achieve by the end of the year, or by the end of 2025. And then once you've thought of that, if you can write that down, and writing it down is very, very powerful rather than just thinking about it. And then once you've written it down, if you can plan what you can do today to start the process of getting to that fantastic idea. And then once you've written that down in your plan, then you do something today to get it moving. And even that very process can create momentum. Another important thing about momentum is that it's really about small steps leading to massive leaps, rather than taking two big gigantic moves too early. If you think of a long jump specialist, which I'm not, but if you think of a long jump specialist, when they go for a long jump, they don't take a long jump, a long jump, a long jump, and another long jump, and then the final long jump. That won't work. They take small steps, and they build on those and build up a bit of intensity with that, so that they can go on to take their big leap. For some people, who need to build up a lot of connections as part of their big goal, rather than trying to get 100 a day, it might be something as simple as maybe get 5 connections a day, say on LinkedIn or whatever it might be. 5, that's 25 in a week, 50, 2 weeks, etc. So it's kind of small steps leading to massive leaps. And then the final thing I want to talk about, and I think it's kind of very important now coming out of COVID, is the idea of momentum shift. You can see it in sport when there's a key event. You might have a match, say a rugby match going on, and at a particular point, one team makes what's called a dominant tackle. And from that, they add intensity, but they've got that key event to get into that shift of moving their momentum. In politics, people use media management once they have a particular thing that gets the momentum. For our coming out of COVID, the vaccines have obviously been a big momentum shifter, but you really need to work on that to make sure you get the best out of it. For Waterford, it's the financing of the North Quay is an obvious example. It's a key event momentum shifter, and it needs to be built on, because it just can't just have an event and just leave it. You have to build on that. So really, to go back on that, you're talking about the importance of a positive mindset, and then the importance of using that to create momentum, and then from that, grabbing that momentum shift and moving on it to make it unstoppable if you can. So it's a good time to just check on the original mindsets of yourselves who registered. The question we asked was, do you feel Ireland will successfully recover from the effects of COVID-19 by 2025? And we got, up until about 2 days ago, 100% of people said absolutely yes. That's going to change a little bit. It's gone back maybe a little bit since we've had a few more registered, but we're talking well up to the 100% there in the responses. So that means really for yourselves, you're in that positive mindset area, and that's good to know. So I'm going to pass you over to Linda now to talk us through the kind of challenge that the speakers, our guest speakers, had to take to provide us with the main content of today. So I'll pass you over to Linda.
Thanks, Fearghal. And it's, as Fearghal said, it's now time to hear from our guest speakers. So each of the guest speakers were given the same 5 for 25x challenge. So they to speak about their perspectives on Resurgence based on their knowledge, experience, and ideas for recovery from COVID-19 over the next few years to 2025. To add to the challenge, each speaker was asked to provide at least 5 examples of Resurgence in their delivery in 12 minutes or less. They were asked to provide a video package of their inputs to avoid the possibility of broadband breakdowns, which we've already experienced this morning, so we're trying to avoid more, and so that they could take part fully, obviously, in the session afterwards with attendees, and they didn't need to worry about their presentations. So we're going to hear from 2 speakers now, and have our first workshop then directly after their inputs. Fearghal, back to you.
The first up is Sean Brady. Sean's a certified Microsoft Cloud Development Engineer. He speaks regularly on the benefits of cloud adoption for lean process improvements. He's also a member of the Association of Data Protection Officers and has been asked to speak on cloud security at various data protection conferences. He's a founding member of Grow Remote, which is a non-profit initiative to promote remote working as a means to repopulate the towns and villages of Ireland while benefiting our economy and environment. He's championing smarter working practices using Microsoft Cloud services and how the future of work is remote. He's created a really good presentation, and it's a little bit challenging too. Over to you, Sean.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Brady, and I'm delighted to be part of this wonderful event to support a vibrant recovery for Ireland from COVID-19. In fact, I would like to speak to you about how the COVID-19 pandemic itself could help us turn this scary and challenging situation into an opportunity for resurgence. And I'll do so by speaking about climate change and remote working. So first, the bad news, or actually the scary news. Climate change obviously hasn't gone away, but we now know that we must curb the CO2 emissions to no less than 420 gigatons from 2018. So they actually now can predict before COVID that we were going to hit this tipping point by 2030, because in 2019, we released the highest record amount of CO2 at 33 gigatons. So they knew by 2030, this is going to be hit the tipping point. So simple maths. So if you had 12 years and you're releasing 33 gigatons a year, that's the limit. So it's very simple. The reality is we are currently using up renewable resources of 1.7 Earths. And unless things change, we'll need 3 Earths by 2050. I love this next quote, which basically says it all. anyone who believes in indefinite growth of anything physical on a physically finite planet is either a madman or an economist. So no offense to economists here today, but I love this point where reality is we must do less. That's the key word I want you to take away from my presentation, less. It's the only way we're going to solve the problems that we're currently seeing. And the good news is COVID-19, it might be the answer. It's because it's the ultimate disruptor. Is nothing else has disrupted our lives more than COVID-19, which could be a good thing. And let me explain why that could be. So COVID, obviously pollution before and after has been significant. So we've been involved in the biggest remote working experiment ever. And it's obviously has certain impacts, positive impacts. For Ireland alone, this is coming from the Environmental Protection Agency. We've actually consumed 50% less petrol in 2020 than we did the year before. That, believe it or not, translates into 35% cleaner air. This has been measured by the Environmental Protection Agency, 35% cleaner air in our cities as a consequence. We have actually traveling less because of the lockdowns, but also remote working. And you can see here, this is the map of travel that we were doing to offices, commuting to our work before COVID. You can see the heat map here, and you can see all the commuter belts around our cities, and also the traffic that's creating, the amount of CO2 that was generating was incredibly significant to both our economy and to our environment. And of course, we're also going to be hit with these fines in the future as well for our emissions. So the view from the future was presented by Forbes magazine in January 2020, just before the COVID pandemic hit. And they believed by 2030 that the future of work would be like this. Face-to-face meetings would be almost extinct. Every job interview would be virtual. So you'd never have to go to an office to get a job. It would always be virtual. Actually, companies will be taxed because of these fines coming down. Governments will start fining and taxing employees and businesses for travel. So there'll be a rapid shift towards displaced remote teams. And of course, as a consequence, office buildings would have to be repurposed in cities as they will be empty. This is this future vision of remote working. But reality is it's going to be now the future, very sooner, because they believe now, because of COVID, that view will now no longer be 2030, it'll actually be 2025. So this has actually accelerated this change, and this is going to have a benefit to us, both as a human species, but also to our economies. So I love this quote as well from Abraham Lincoln: the most reliable way to predict the future is to create it. So my big message to you today is be the future. Let's embrace remote working and see it as a positive, see it as a way now to change our trajectory for our economy and also for our environment. And what does it mean to be remote working? Well, it's not working at home in your laptop on your kitchen table. It's actually more into how a company works together. Remote teaming is a better way of actually explaining what remote working is. And I want to share with you today my remote journey and how Cloud Assist has actually embraced remote working for the last 3 years. So it all started in 2015 when I was selected as an e-car ambassador by the ESB to drive electric for a year. And what was interesting was it did obviously reduce my carbon emissions. I still traveled 18,000 kilometers a year, but it reduced the amount of carbon. But it still had a carbon footprint, no matter what you did. And what was interesting was it got me thinking, why are we doing this? Why are we traveling? So I had the opportunity to get involved with the Climate Launchpad, which has been going on for a number of years, maybe 6 or 7 years. It's a European-wide competition for green business startups. if the best way to explain it is a bit like Eurovision for nerds. So ideas put forward, and then each country comes up with a finalist, and then that goes forward to a European competition to be picked every year. And our idea was, our question that we posed is, why do we need to meet in person to do business? Remember, this is back in 2016 when everyone was traveling around and business travel was increasing on average 8% per year, every year. And that meant business travel was actually creating need for travel because of 2 billion meetings every year involving travel by one or more people in that meeting. 2 billion meetings was happening every year. So what we want to try and do is actually see how we can avoid that travel. And the best way that we found that was to do that is equate CO2 into business terms. And this is what a ton of CO2 looks like. Let's give you a rough idea of what it looks like. So that's a ton of CO2 when you hear about these terms. Now, what we wanted to do was translate that into business terms. So for every ton of CO2 saved from not traveling, you gain 3 days of productivity. That's a minimum. You'll gain actually sometimes more. But for every ton of CO2, 3 days of productivity can be gained. So we actually did that. So Cloud Assist in 2017, September 2017, we implemented a no visit rule. And people thought we were a bit crazy at the time to do that. So we had no travel whatsoever, no offices, no commuting, no customer visits whatsoever. They didn't visit us, we didn't visit them. No coffee meetups, even no conferences. We went absolute no visit rule. We even went further and tried to bridge the gap with our customers and new customers and sent them virtual coffees so we can have that relationship, but even though we never met in person. We even went further and invested in virtual presence technology. You might have seen this on TV, on programs like Big Bang Theory, where this is me actually attending a conference where I'm based in my home office in Limerick, and that could have been anywhere. That conference could have been anywhere in the world. And of course, you can see them smiling faces, which is wonderful. No one will ignore you when you're on a virtual presence unit. It's a really powerful and fun thing to do. I was then introduced to Tracy Keogh in 2018, and she had this amazing idea how we could use remote working to repopulate the towns and villages in Ireland, which were obviously, and we knew this, were being depleted as people were moving into the cities for work. And the whole idea is that remote working will allow you to work from anywhere, provided you have a decent broadband connection. And Tracy, with Grow Remote, has actually helped companies, first of all, understand what remote working is, then show where the remote working jobs are, and then help remote workers connect together in a community. And this is where it's incredibly powerful. And I would ask any of you today to go to growremote.ie and sign up. It's a wonderful initiative, nonprofit initiative, funded by the Western Development Commission to help us repopulate our towns and villages today. And that can be done quite easily. And that would mean, well, how would that mean to you as a, in your pocket? Well, you could get rid of your second family car for a start. And that actually means a saving of 10,000 annually. This is according to the AA. And that also means every car that's not manufactured equates to 3 years of driving CO2. That's the energy going into your car manufacturer. Forget about actually number of cars on the road. So if by reducing number of cars on the road, we'll actually reduce CO2. So remote working actually will bring 1.1 million tons of CO2 saving per year. That's the projection for Ireland. This is for Ireland. And what does what's 1 ton? 100,000 tons of CO2 looks like that. It's the height of the Empire State Building. And so 1.1 million tons of CO2 looks like 11 Empire State Buildings. So that's the opportunity, huge opportunity, which also equates to 3.3 million productivity days gained for Ireland, making it better for Ireland. So my Resurgent messages are very simple. Embrace remote working. Don't see it as a bad thing. It's a very powerful thing for our economy and our environment. Join a remote working chapter today. Learn about remote working. Connect with other remote workers. There is a remote Grow Remote chapter near you today, so join it. Then ditch the second family car, and also then potentially move to the countryside, because you can move anywhere with remote working. You don't have to be within commuting distance of your office anymore. And then finally, this is a message that was given to me by John Dawson, a good friend of mine. He said, if we all change a little, we'll only achieve a little. So if we all do a lot towards remote working, we will achieve a lot. So thank you very much. And again, look forward to speaking to you today at Resurgence 2025X. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sean, for that fascinating input. They're really powerful graphics. And I suppose if we take anything from today, first of all, everybody should tell their friends. We are recording this session, so they should watch it. And I think if Gerald is still on the line, we have a bit of work to do around our broadband lobbying as well. It certainly comes up all the time. And as he said, we are working on the National Development Plan review at the moment. And after what Sean just said there, I can guarantee you all that we will put it at very high up on the agenda for sure. So now let's hear from our next speaker, which is Michael Kelly of GIY, of course, no stranger to all of us here in Waterford. GIY is a social enterprise that aims to support 100 million people to grow, cook and eat some of their own food for a healthier, more sustainable world by 2030. He's a social entrepreneur, an author, a TV presenter, and a hacker grower. GIY's mission, I suppose, which is familiar to a lot of us, is to inspire, educate, and enable a global movement of food growers whose collective actions will help to rebuild a sustainable food system. This year, GIY is supporting over 700,000 people to grow, cook, and eat some of their own food at home, at school, in work, and of course in the community via contents, events, campaigns, and products. GIY are passionate about the power of food growing experiences to give people an improved understanding of food and nutrition, also known as food empathy, and work with some of the world's leading brands and philanthropic organisations. So we'll hand over to Mick now for his presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Kelly. I'm the founder of GIY, and thanks very much to Fearghal and to Waterford Chamber for inviting me to contribute today. My 5 ideas for Resurgence for 2021. And boy, do we need those kind of ideas after the year that we've had in 2020. Brené Brown in her podcast Unlocking Us talked about 2020 as being the year of FFTs, or first effing times. And, you know, just because of the pandemic, it felt like we had, you know, one new experience after another to try and grapple with. And I think that explains why it was such an exhausting year, you know, and we kind of crave a return to the same old, which would be very, you know, only natural to crave that given all that uncertainty. But I suppose we have to think about whether the status quo is something we really wanted to return to. When you think about, you know, the impact we're having on our planet in terms of climate change and all of the injustice and inequality and, you know, racial and gender inequality and ill health and so on that's out there. I think 2021, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your point of view, is going to continue to be uncertain and unstable, and you know, all of that chronic instability, I think, is going to continue. And so these ideas are really, really important. My 5 ideas are very much linked, I suppose, to my experience of running GIY and starting GIY. And my first idea is to follow your passion in terms of your career. The Japanese talk about the concept of ikigai, which is, you know, if you get to work at something which you're really passionate about, that you can do better than anyone else, that the world needs, and that you can get paid well for, then you're in that sort of state of the ultimate sort of career, and you'll never work a day in your life. And I feel very fortunate to work at something that I'm passionate about and that I think I'm good at and that the world needs. And basically, when I left IT and started GIY, you know, starting something brand new and leaving a good job and a good pensionable salary to do something so deeply uncertain was absolutely terrifying. And I remember the sort of existential fear in my stomach, you know, making that decision, and yet I'd absolutely never go back. So I think that that's the first thing. If you've got that kind of itch that you need to scratch, then go do it, you know, because life is short and the world is broad. My second idea is about, and I suppose it's something similar, but it's about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. You know, Joseph Campbell in The Hero's Journey, when you undertake something great in your life, I think you get challenged and you get tested. And for me, the one that I always remember is you know, in 2016 when we were building GIY, Grow HQ rather, we got to a point towards the end where we were 300,000 euros short of our fundraising target to build it, and we had come to the point where we were waiting on a grant of about 150 grand, I think, that would allow us to sign the contract with the builder to go ahead and start the project. And I remember getting a phone call to say that we hadn't got the grant, and just that, you know, that utter disappointment, that shattering disappointment that we had, and having to make a decision, you know, are we going to stop? Are we going to wait until we get this money, or are we going to go ahead? And I felt, you know, really strongly that we needed to go ahead and proceed and commit to it, you know, to make it real. And so we made that decision to go ahead, even though we were 300 grand shy of our target. We signed the contract with the builder. Hope he's not watching this today. And it was a very fine line between being reckless and just, you know, actually making that commitment and jumping off the cliff and doing it. And that's what we did. And of course, we found the money and did the project ultimately. So at some point, I think when you're faced with a big decision, you have to feel that fear and do it anyway, and go ahead and make the commitment to do it, even though it doesn't feel safe to do so. My third idea is I guess related to COVID, which is that I think entrepreneurs really thrive on uncertainty to a degree. And I think GIY, you know, not just myself, but I think the people, the senior team in the organization are entrepreneurs, and they do thrive on uncertainty. They may not like it as much, but they do thrive in it. And last year when we were tested, I mean, Grow HQ was closed for 3 or 4 months because of COVID. You know, all our corporate business basically collapsed because we couldn't run growing programs for companies because they weren't, you know, the people weren't at work. Our education program at Grow HQ just stopped overnight. And so we had to, you know, adapt and completely change almost all aspects of our work. And you know, what we noticed, I guess, was the retail side of things. Online retail just went through the roof between March and July of last year. Ended up about 350% in the year. And we completely repurposed our education program to put it online. And, you know, in a good year, we would get maybe 1,000 people to Grow HQ on an education course. And we were able to reach, you know, upwards of 8,000 people online last year because of that pivot. Overall, for the year last year, we ended up with a similar level of income, and certainly a hugely expanded level of impact, you know, compared to 2019. That's something I'm really, really proud of, given it was such a difficult year. So I think, you know, uncertainty, while it feels very uncomfortable, it can be, you know, you can still thrive, or at least survive in those times. My fourth idea is an idea for this year, which is a program we're calling Grow It Forward. And again, last year, I suppose through our kind of approaches to government and so on, our idea always around food growing is that if we can get people to grow their own food, even if it's only, you know, 5% of their own food, then it has this huge knock-on impact on the rest of their lives. And you know, the other 95% of the food that they eat changes. It's an amazing thing in terms of being a catalyst for a healthier more sustainable lifestyle. So our goal is always to get as many people as we possibly can to grow some of their own food. So we're always thinking about scale. How do you sort of get to huge numbers, you know, not just clusters of 50 or 100 or 1,000 people. And so we approached the government through Healthy Ireland last year, towards the end of last year, and had this idea for a program called Grow It Forward. And the idea was simply that we would distribute 50,000 growing packs through the library network. So people could come into their library, get one of these growing packs for free from us, and there would be 50,000 available to them. But the kind of the hook to real scale is that we catalyze and encourage those 50,000 people, you know, to sow a seed and grow something and then pass it on to 9 other people. You know, pass the seedling on, so a little tiny little plant, give it to somebody, encourage to 9 other people, rather encourage them to grow it on from there. And that's why we call the program Grow It Forward. And so we can get from 50,000 people to 500,000 people by getting those people to grow it forward. So it's like you're sort of mobilizing this army of DIYers to go out and encourage other people to do it, and hopefully reach 500,000 people. And that program will be launching in the next couple of months, once the spring kicks in. We're really, really excited about that. And our fifth idea, and it kind of, you know, there's a theme, I suppose, of facing the fear and being ambitious in all of these ideas. And the UN had designated this the decade of action for climate change, and probably our last chance as a civilization, I suppose, to fix our climate. And so we felt very strongly that we had an obligation as an organization to play our part in that. And we came up with the idea of setting ourselves a goal of inspiring and engaging 100 million people around the world to grow some of their own food for the first time by the end of 2030. And it's a goal that's kind of ridiculous, you know, for you know, a small social enterprise in Waterford to set itself a goal like this, like it's a moonshot, right? But we decided to set ourselves that goal, and strange things happen when you set a goal like that, and you're forced to think about how would we actually do that. And you know, obviously it's through things like the work we do on TV and reaching a kind of a mass audience. And so, you know, I think setting a big, as they're called, big, hairy, audacious goals like that is something really, really important. And so we did that. So our goal, as I said, is to get 100 million people to grow their own food, and starting to imagine what a world might look like where we achieve that, and what contribution that would have. So they are my 5 ideas. I suppose the final thing I want to say is that you know, that constant kind of instability and uncertainty that I talked about at the start. As I said, it can be exhausting dealing with that, you know, because our brains are kind of, you know, using up so much energy trying to make those, adapt to those changes. And so my final thing to message to you today, which I hope is of use, is that to make your New Year's resolution, if you're into making them, to get fighting fit for a constant series of FFTs. And by fighting fit, that, you know, whatever that means to you, it could be something about, you know, making sure you stay fit and active, you get, you know, plenty of rest and sleep when you need it, give yourself time to recover, you know, connect, meditate, do your yoga, whatever it is that you do to stay fit. And hopefully we can continue to resurge and have an amazing 2021. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mick, for those fabulous ideas, and thanks, Sean, previous to that. So there's 10 ideas for Resurgence you've heard in about 24 minutes. What we're going to do now is our first workshop, where we're going to try and look at those ideas and see, can we add to them, and see, can we develop them a bit further. Slides there, Brian, if you're there.
Hi there, 2 seconds.
Good man. And really, it's just how we're going to manage this. We're going to break up it into groups, probably of around 6 or so, and we're just going to look at a couple of kind of questions, and we'll then feedback to everybody. And the idea really is there's 10 ideas you've heard there. You have ideas, and can we add to them? Can we develop them? Can we do something else with them? Brian is sharing the screen. So here's the activity really for our Whistle Stop workshop. If you can pick one idea from each of the 2 Resurgence inputs, and just think about it this way: can you, as an individual or as part of the group you're going to be in, see how it might be implemented, how you might implement it? How can it be developed further? And can you think of any other Resurgence ideas at this stage? And we'll do that again a little bit later as we build on the ideas. I just move down one there, Brian. And so to do this, we just have, we need a few volunteers within every group. We need one person to volunteer as a room leader to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. And then when we're doing the feedback, you'll need to be ready to kind of share at least one outcome of your discussion. And then we have another thing, just a recorder, and that would be somebody who can type onto their own PC in bullet points any of the ideas that have come up for emailing to myself at fearghaloneill@atpo.online after the session. And then when we come back together, we're just, if you're going to pick 2 ideas, if you could put them up in the chat box, and we go through some of those ideas then. So that's the job. Basically, we need a room leader and a recorder. And I'm just going to show you that, Brian, if we just move it on, just to remind you of what we've heard. Sean Brady's 5 ideas: embrace remote working, join a Grow Remote chapter, ditch the second family car, move to the countryside, and if we all change a little, then we will only change a little. And then we go on to mix. Brian, thank you. Follow your passion, feel the fear and do it anyway, thrive on uncertainty, grow it forward, and go for a big, hairy, audacious goal. Okay, thank you. So basically, Brian, now I'm going to put you in groups, and we'll see. We'll go for about 8 or 9 minutes working together, and then we'll come back to feedback. Thank you, Brian.
No problem at all. Let me just start the breakout rooms here.
Okay. Good to see you all. I hope you had a good discussion. What we're going to do now is the people who volunteer to be a recorder, if you could just put 2 of the ideas you might have discussed up on the chat box, and we'll give you a minute to do that. So whoever was recording.
Sorry, Fearghal, into the chat box or
into the
by
chat.
email?
Oh no, into the chat box. And basically what we'll do then is all the other ideas you might have, you could email them to me after the session. So if you just choose 2 of the ideas and pop them up in the chat box. Okay, we might, we've got a lot of ideas there. You know what? I'm just going to pick about maybe two or three, and we'll just see what they might mean. And what I'll be doing is I'll be collecting these thematically and sending them back to you after the session anyway. So actually, we might just look at the first one. Michelle, to everyone, building a network in Waterford around remote working outside of your own company in similar industries. Fill that gap of incidental networking. Michelle, do you want to just tell us what was said about that?
Yeah, sure. So that was myself and Michael. We were in a breakout room and we chose the theme of embrace remote working. So kind of with the view to, how can we retain maybe people who have returned from, Cork or Dublin in Waterford once return to the office goes back to normal, that, and to help people while we are all working remotely, that we could try and build a network around remote working, but outside of your own company.
Okay.
So you're kind of filling that gap of incidental networking, maybe at events or at meetings. And also, we are all networking, I imagine, within our own companies, but just missing that other piece of networking, whether it's to solve problems across similar industries or for new business. So yeah, to kind of try and capitalize on people who are working remotely in Waterford at the moment. Okay,
super, Michelle. I'll just pop down to one here. It just jumps over at me. Where did it go? There's so many here. There's one here from. My God, there's so many here now. Oh yeah, Mary Boland and Eileen Jameson discussed how to help managers evolve into the virtual team manager that they need to become, and that was Eileen who put that one up.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Fearghal. We discussed, Mary is in Theatre Royal and I'm in WJ Partners coaching, and so we're looking at how in the arts and theatre you keep people motivated, and then expanding that across within the virtual team environment, how your standard manager hasn't actually been trained a lot in people management skills and hasn't really had much training perhaps in managing a virtual team, and then how we need to work, what support we can provide to managers in order to help them bridge that gap and learn to be that virtual manager that provides the support to the team in order to keep your production and your efficiencies going and keep morale high. So we're looking at different ways of doing that.
Okie doke. That's actually vital when you think about it. If remote working, that has to be a part of the deal. Absolutely. Okay, I'll just go to another one here. I just go to Dennis Hegarty at combining couriers' business deliveries to avoid duplicate journeys. Dennis.
Yeah, hi, Fearghal. Yeah.
Hi, Dennis. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was just an idea. It wasn't really one of the topics covered on the talks, but there's so many deliveries happening now between businesses bringing out deliveries to clients, like print cartridges, whatever it is, food deliveries, and this sort of, it's just there's so much happening. Could it be a way of combining them? Because obviously that would cut back on the amount of traveling and use of petrol. So yeah, so there's obviously maybe cities outside of Ireland might have already done this type of thing.
Yes.
So look at that and see how we could implement it in Waterford.
Yeah, totally. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I'll go for one more. Agnes Aylward just put down big audacious goal. Did you come up with one, Agnes? Are you there, Agnes? Hi, Agnes.
Hello. Sorry, I was muted until now. I was twinned with Tracy in Chicago, and we discussed big audacious goals that would sort of reach across internationally, we looked at resurgence of society. And we talked about the importance of getting society in behind, I mean, as a whole group, in a way, a bit like our first speaker was talking about, the chance we have now from COVID to have a big social change. I thought of Japan after World War II and how the whole country came in on that goal of bringing back the country from ashes into the second best economy in the world. Tracy thought of Chicago recovering after the Great Fire there. And we had just got as far then as talking about how to get everybody bought into the message. And we didn't get much further than that, but I think that's essential to bring a huge change. And in a way, today's seminar is the beginning of it. So that's our bit.
Yep. That's good. And hi, Tracy from Chicago. Good to see you. Well, I can't see you but, at the moment, but it's good to have you on board. Okay, that's a very good point. And as I say, if the people who are doing the recording, if they email me the ideas, I'm going to formulate them again and send them all back to you, and we can add to them and do exactly what you're talking about there, Agnes. So what we'll do now, we might just stop on those ideas for now, because we're going to move on to some more speakers, and after we have those, we'll go for another workshop session. So I'm going to pass you over to Linda, who's going to tell us about our next speaker.
Thanks, Fearghal. And now we're going to hear from our three other contributors, starting with David Mcnamara. David is an economist and director with EY DKM Economic Advisory. He works with clients across the public and private sectors to solve problems and understand the economic drivers impacting their organisations, helping them to build a better working world. David is an expert in macroeconomics with particular focus on the Irish, UK and Eurozone economies. David has recently helped clients understand and prepare for the impact of Brexit and COVID-19. Brexit in particular has posed unique challenges to the Irish economy, and the sectoral implications have created complex problems, which David has supported clients in solving throughout the turbulent 2020, while planning for recovery in 2021 and beyond. So over to you, David.
Good morning, and thank you to Fearghal and Waterford Chamber for inviting me to speak at this event. And it's a real pleasure to speak at an event that has an optimistic tinge to it, looking ahead to a brighter future after a pretty bleak year that we've all endured in 2020. To give you an introduction to myself, my name is David Mcnamara. I'm an economist by training, and I work in EY's economic advisory practice. I've been with EY for the last 2.5 years. Prior to that, I worked in financial services and academia. So I've worked across a host of different sectors with a whole bunch of different clients. And over the past year, we've been particularly helping clients solve issues and problems that they face in response to the crisis in terms of COVID and also Brexit and other issues that they face. So I'll try today to bring some of that experience over that past while. What this presentation will not be is a data-heavy and chart-heavy economic forecasting presentation. I'll try and bring some personal insight and anecdotes, stepping outside my comfort zone, perhaps a little bit. So let's get into the first topic. And the first one is science, and the fact that we've been saved by science. And I am not an expert, and I'm not going to delve into to the scientific impact of COVID and forecast what might happen with the future, but just observing as a layman over the past few months the speed and the efficacy of the vaccines that have been created by scientists across the world is just inspiring. I've picked out two particular scientists that have been working on the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine from Ireland, Professor Teresa Lamb and Professor Adrian Hill. I think it's fantastic that for such a small country we really punch above our weight in terms of our experts and our scientists. I think what's important really is not only to have invested in this period in that scientific endeavor, but to continue in that vein now over the next few years. And as an economist, we understand that to increase the productive capacity of any economy, you need to invest now to reap the benefits in the future. And Ireland in particular needs to do that. We compete on an international stage in terms of our markets. We don't have huge natural resources that we can rely on. Our key natural resource is our people and their skills. And we've probably lagged other countries over the last few years. But what's really heartening and gives me hope over the next few years is that we've really pivoted now over the last year towards investing in research and innovation. We've now got a new department specifically for that purpose, the Department of Higher Education, Innovation and Science. And I think that's a really good sign. And you see it even this last week where the BT Young Scientist exhibition was held online, and you see more inspiring ideas from teenagers all over the country. So it would only give you hope for the future, but we need to invest in it. And I think the early signs are great. And if it's a lesson that we can take from the COVID-19 crisis, it's that you need to invest in science, because science will come to your rescue when you need it. So moving on to my second topic, and probably back into more of my comfort zone, and it's the economy. And the second resurgence topic for me has been our resilience. And I suppose that's something that's happened over the past and the present, but it's important for our future and our immediate future in particular, is that the Irish economy has performed quite well compared to other nations. Now, lots of people have lost their job, and there's been significant impact on the economy, unprecedented. But the indicators in terms of a macro levels show that we've weathered it relatively well. Like GDP, which isn't a perfect measure, but one of the best performing economies in Europe. And if you look at our tax take, so corporation tax, which has held up very well because of the presence of those multinationals, but also our income tax base, which is our most important tax base, which funds most of our public services, that's only fallen very marginally last year. So people that have remained in their jobs have continued to pay tax, and that's allowed the government to provide those unprecedented supports to households and businesses and the health system. And even if you look at where we've had to borrow to plug those holes in the short term, our borrowing rates have fallen to negative rates. So to put that in perspective, 2 weeks ago we borrowed €5.5 billion, a 10-year bond on the international markets, and we paid a negative interest rate of 2.5%. That would mean if you were getting a mortgage from your bank and your bank decided to pay you interest instead of you paying the bank interest. So it's an amazing turnaround from where we were 10 years ago. And that resilience is allowing us to support the economy through this very difficult time. And that's related then to my third topic, and that's around abandoning austerity as a means to spur a recovery or support an economy. And if you cast your minds back to 10 years ago, we were in a very, very different space. The IMF were about to arrive in the country in late 2010. We couldn't borrow on international markets. The state was essentially bankrupt. And the prescription really was at that time by many international experts and international bodies was that you need to get your deficit down and your debt down, and there's a very difficult medicine to take. And that really goes against most of the economic theory and what economists were saying at the time. And thankfully, we've moved past that. And you see those international bodies, and there's a quote there from the OECD chief economist talking about the fact that austerity is not the answer and that you need to think about it more holistically. It's not just about a balance sheet, it's about people's lives and the wider economic effects. So interest rates are low. It's a perfect time to borrow to support the economy while the private sector can't do the heavy lifting. And we can see that in the numbers of what the government has done over the past year. Nearly 10 billion in income supports to households, unthinkable even a year ago. 21 billion budget for the Department of Health, hundreds of millions in supports to the enterprise sector, and that's really kept the economy afloat. And mistakes have been made along the way. Things could have been done better, but things were done at speed, and we're a world away from where we were 10 years ago when the government was really adding to the pain by introducing the austerity measures that we had. So that gives me reason for optimism that the economy can come out of this recession and this downturn in a much stronger place than it did 10 years ago. Moving on to maybe more local level impacts of the COVID-19 and looking at some of the maybe positive impacts that we can take from the last year. This one is around the public realm, transport, physical activity. And one of the things most of us experienced was when our social circle really contracted and our social space really contracted to 2K for a period of time and 5K presently, we really started to explore our immediate surroundings and probably value our public realm in a different way. And what you've seen then subsequently over the past 10 months is local authorities and governments react to that to provide the space necessary to allow people room to breathe and room to get that physical activity that they need within their 2K and 5K zone. A couple of examples we've seen in Irish towns and cities, the coastal mobility route in Dunleary, Rathdown, which helped to provide a safe cycleway for all ages while the public transport capacity was reduced because of COVID-19. Princess Street in Cork, pedestrianised during the summer to allow businesses to operate within the COVID restrictions, and it was a huge success. And I suppose that has, provided a window to what a better future could be if we design our public realm, our towns and our villages and cities in a different way that is actually centred on people rather than the movement of traffic. And I think that's a good thing for everyone because you reduce your pollution, you reduce your carbon footprint, and people are getting more exercise. And you've seen an explosion in bike sales last year. You couldn't get a bike for love nor money. And some of that will revert to type over the next year. Potentially, people might switch back to our old ways. But even if there's a small cohort of people who continue with that physical activity that they might have taken up in the pandemic, that's a huge impact on the economy. Less poor health, less spending for the health service, better mental health for people. So I think this is a real positive shift that we've seen, and it's something that we need to take further and take on over the next few years as we move out of the pandemic. Finally, my final resurgence topic, and it's one that's close to my heart, and it's around the resurgence of rural Ireland. It's close to my heart because I come from rural Ireland. I grew up in Mayo in a small village, and I left home at 18, went to college and went to Dublin, as a lot of people do, to work. And I never really considered that I might have an opportunity to move home until the pandemic came, and now it's a serious option for me and my family. And the remote working piece has been difficult for people to get used to. I think people miss the social interaction, but it has given people flexibility, and it has, I suppose, broadened people's horizons around where they can work and where they can live and what their expectations are. And you've seen that reflected in some of the numbers we've seen. So property viewings and queries have gone through the roof for rural towns and villages across the country outside the main cities. The rollout of the National Broadband Plan will enable people to work remotely anywhere they choose. And I think businesses will probably have a permanent flexible working or remote working workforce when we come out the other side of this pandemic. And I think that's a huge thing for rural Ireland, because for years we've seen a brain drain, or young people leave and maybe not come back, and you've seen that aging of rural Ireland versus the cities. And that's important, because if you get more young people coming back to live, to raise their families in rural communities, that provides a vibrancy for rural communities. It provides an energy, and that's has a significant impact on those economies. And I just wanted to give you an example of that. So we have a young analyst who joined our team from college last year, Clodagh Nash. She's from County Clare, finished her degree in UCD, and was living and working with us in Dublin. Pandemic hits, and she decides to move back home, as a lot of people do. But where Clodagh has had a huge impact on her local community, and she has an impact anyway, even when she's just coming home for the weekend. But living there, Clodagh decided during the month of November to raise money for a local children's charity called Clare Crusaders. And she decided to swim in the sea every morning at sunrise in a bid to raise funds for this really worthwhile charity. And she raised over €6,000. So that's just one example of someone contributing to their community that they might not have been able to do if they were in Dublin and commuting in and out to their office. It gives people the space to maybe broaden their horizons, think of other things, spend more time with their families perhaps rather than commuting, and think about their wider impact that they can have on their communities. So I think this is, this gives us an opportunity to breathe new life into rural Ireland, and it's one of the positive things that has come out of this pandemic. So that's my 5 topics. I hope you found them interesting, and I'm looking forward to a really interesting discussion over the course of today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David, for that wonderful input. It's actually quite a lot in that, which we'll come back to. So we're going to hear now from Mary Boland. She's native of Dunmore East, County Waterford, and she's been committed to supporting artists and arts activity throughout her career. She's spent many years working in a wide variety of management roles in the arts sector. She's worked as production manager on various theatre productions, as well as company producer with Red Kettle Theatre Company, Little Red Kettle and Spree. With 12 years experience as theatre manager of the Theatre Royal, Mary has played a major role in the development of the venue's journey. So we'll just go over to Mary now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Boland and I'm theatre manager at the Theatre Royal in Waterford. Since 2009, the Theatre Royal has worked at reinventing itself. As a 63-year-old organisation set inside a 235-year-old building, it was clear that the legacy of the building needed to be preserved, while at the same time the vision for the future required 21st century thinking. Audiences were listened to, while artist relationships and partnerships developed. Out of that work, Theatre Royal began to grow its offering, increase its audience engagement, and diversify its artistic offering while ensuring financial viability and security for the organisation and its team. Theatre Royal strives to be at the heart of its community. It stirs emotions, it entertains, it enlightens, and it informs us. We now ask ourselves, how do we ensure that this ambition is realised as we work through a worldwide pandemic? And how do we now need to adapt to ensure resurgence, recovery, rebirth, and revival? Adapting to new ways. Team management and board. How have the team management and board dealt with the situation to date and managed continuing steps to recovery? Our strategic and development plan is ongoing and constantly reviewed and updated by the team with oversight by the theatre board. On March 13th, we immediately reviewed the staffing structure in terms of the needs of the organisation and the importance of retaining our staff long-term, which then informed our decisions on the retention and laying off staff during the March COVID lockdown. Only those critical to the ongoing operation were retained, those who needed to stay in touch with our artists and producers, audiences and funding stakeholders. We immediately applied for support for wages through the TWSS scheme. Staff were communicated with in terms of the situation regarding the venue's closure and the impact on each of them. Return to work was slowly implemented in line with government guidelines, with the focus at all times on the reopening of the theatre when appropriate to do so. Correct and comprehensive measures were put in place with our staff and maintenance teams to ensure best hygiene practice and protocols before returning to the theatre following closure. On reopening on August 13th, a minimum number of the team returned while adhering to strict health and safety regulations. From September, most of the core team were back on their normal hours, be they part-time or full-time, as while audience numbers were low, the work involved in ensuring the health and safety of all of our staff, performers and patrons was intensified as we were open to live audience. Our COVID-19 response team was established to take responsibility for the design and implementation of our health and safety plan, while premises adjustments to front of house, administration and backstage areas were carried out to ensure the complete safety of all. Each and every member of the theatre team has adapted their proficiencies, upskilled in the areas of risk assessments and health and safety protocols, and having received training, has now become expert in COVID hygiene and management, as well as expert in their own roles. Now that we are open to live performances and endeavour to remain open, the importance of our health and safety regime is paramount to inspire confidence amongst our staff, artists, producers and audiences. Regional and national collaboration. One very positive development that has emerged over the past number of months has been the collective engagement that the arts sector nationally has experienced. We've come together to discuss, plan, share and advocate for the future of the arts. Engagement with the arts sector locally has provided musicians, actors, painters, technicians and more with onstage, albeit quite often in an empty theatre, opportunities. National partnerships have been developed with National Campaign for the Arts, Theatre Forum, the Arts Council and Department of Culture. This engagement has strengthened Theatre Royal's place on the national map and positioned Theatre Royal as the cultural leader in the region due to its diverse offering and experiences. As part of the ongoing partnerships developed, plans for regional artist supports and opportunities will be rolled out in 2021. An example of this? The South East Venues Network was formed in 2019 and includes 8 theatres and arts centres in the South East region. It was formed with the purpose to provide supports for strengthening arts centres and venues operations and programme development, and with the aim to further support artists and programme delivery in the South East. In 2021, each network member will contribute funds to create an artist bursary. The purpose of the award is to support a professional artist based in the South East with the opportunity to develop their arts practice. It provides artists with time to think and research and reflect and critically engage with their art. To create new work for the benefit of the region and its audiences is central to this bursary. The benefits provided to the Theatre Royal through this network are many, including the insurance of placing Theatre Royal further on the regional and national map, thus providing opportunities for advanced engagement with audiences and funders. From live stage to live stream. When it became apparent last March that our country and indeed the world needed to shut down, the theatre team began to ask questions and consider options. How can we continue to engage with artists and audiences? How can we ensure the sector in our city and county remains vibrant? And how do we continue to engage with the arts, our peers and colleagues? Very quickly we began to adapt, to consider new ways of creating opportunities for arts practitioners and new ways for audiences to view live performance. We sought out financial aid which has enabled Theatre Royal to invest in equipment and training and to enable the team to upskill and present work. An example of this, keeping the light on. 4 artists all living within 5 km radius of the theatre, a singer, a theatre actor, a spoken word artist and a musical theatre performer were invited to perform on the Theatre Royal stage. Over the course of a day, last May, each arrived at their designated time and separately performed a piece relevant to their own art form. Each piece was filmed and then disseminated online to audiences with the simple message, the Theatre Royal team is keeping the light on for you. This exercise, carried out by the theatre's technical manager Dermot Quinn in partnership with John Loftus Media, gave us the confidence to consider and deliver work to audiences digitally through recorded and live streams. And to date, close to 8,000 audience members have viewed theatre, music, clowning and pantomime. And this work has been viewed in living rooms and classrooms, residential care homes, and has been seen as far afield as Germany, USA, Australia, and in many counties throughout Ireland. In such a short space of time, this new way of delivering work has encouraged us to continue this process. And already for 2021, we have 700 Leaving Cert students signed up to experience a live performance in their classroom from the Theatre Royal stage as part of Theatre Royal's production of its annual Shakespeare Review. Creative rehearsal and performance practices. By its very nature, a rehearsal room is a creative, exciting, buzzing place. Now, directors, actors, stage managers, technical managers, producers need to adapt their way of working to ensure work can continue to be created inside a rehearsal room and can continue to be presented to an audience in a safe and distanced way while continuing to engage, entertain, and inspire. How do you now rehearse a love scene, or a fight scene, or a simple tender moment? When presenting to audiences, how can we ensure the interactive element of the performance, where relevant, can continue to take place? And how do we now need to ensure the experience for the actor and audience member is as engaging as live performance aspires to be? An example of this, Shakespeare Review, making work. So the Theatre Royal will continue to create live theatre for young people. As part of this, we will enter a rehearsal room with a small team of actors supported by a director, designer, stage manager, and student facilitator. January 2021's production of Shakespeare's King Lear will present excerpts from the play. Currently being considered is how the famous eye-gorging scene in King Lear can now happen. How can the director with the actors recreate such an important scene in order to give it the same intense meaning required? The creative mind now needs to work overtime to present something that normally requires such a physical representation. While working with counterparts throughout the country, ideas are being shared, discussion is ongoing. And again, this work brings us, the sector, closer together, while we all endeavour to continue to present excellent work while keeping the sector alive. Working together is key to all of this. Finally, work at making it work for others. The Theatre Royal has a responsibility and an opportunity to assist with the ongoing delivery of work with established and emerging artists and organisations. From our findings and experiences throughout 2020, we are now well placed to support this work. The Theatre Royal team has learned and continues to learn how to present work during a pandemic inside a controlled theatre building. The team's training and upskilling, as well as experiences, can provide assistance to creatively led work, as well as to organisations who need to present meetings, conferences, etc. Future creative practices and work is being programmed for the early part of 2021. This work can continue inside the theatre building. It can rehearse and develop and perform throughout what we see will be a quiet time. If we are unable to welcome in live audiences at that time, the work will be live streamed out to people's homes as like a preview of what's to come later. This is a very exciting prospect, as what it will do is allow work to continue to be created with the view to be seen at a later date. Once we all see a light at the end of that tunnel, we will, and have already begun to do so, build a programme of activity that includes all performance genres: commercial comedy, musical, national theatre, pantomime, as well as art-led music and theatre and dance. And we plan to host a cultural explosion in the latter end of 2021. Is this too ambitious and optimistic? Perhaps. But we need to be ambitious and optimistic to ensure the continued future engagement for and with artists, for and with audiences. Thank you.
Wow, Mary, thank you so much for that. And God, do I miss the arts and the theatre. It's been such a struggle, particularly for all the artists that are out there. So please God, we will see that cultural explosion sooner rather than later. I think we all need it at the moment. Okay, so to our final speaker, we're moving to Gary Graham. Gary is the creator and manager of Board Bia's Bloom Festival. If any of you have been lucky enough to attend, which is held in the Phoenix Park, Dublin, on the June bank holiday weekend of every year. During peacetime and when things are a little bit better. The 5-day event is attended by 120,000 visitors, generating wall-to-wall media coverage and roughly about 50 million spent in the gardening sector per annum. Gary appears as a judge on the highly successful RT1 Super Garden TV series, where his horticulture training comes in very useful. Gary, who I know certainly did live here anyway, I hope he still does, is convinced that Waterford can become an internationally acclaimed horti-tourism mecca, if you believe it, combining and leveraging GIY, Grow HQ, Mount Congreve, Lafcadio, Ahern Gardens, and the Greenway with our favourite climatic conditions and geographical proximity to the UK. So really looking forward to hearing Gary's video, and let's just bring it up here now. So there we go.
Thanks to Fearghal and Neil for inviting me to participate in this event. While I'm not mad about filming myself, if he hadn't asked me, I wouldn't have taken this time to fully reflect on the year that's gone. Like you, I'd be happy to put it behind me, but I also want to take some learnings with me. I couldn't come up with a catchy acronym for my talk, unfortunately, so I'm going to share with you my 5 R's that could be used as ingredients in a recipe for resurgence. I hope you like that. I'm not sure if I mentioned that I work for the food board, Board Bia. So I've written out some speaking points to ensure that I don't forget any of my R's in the story of Bloom 2020, and it should help me stick to the point with no rambling. So the story starts on Saturday, 29th of February. 2020. I was at a garden design seminar in Dublin, and I stayed in the hotel in Santry that night rather than driving back down to Waterford. It's a busy time of year for me, and I'll take any rest that I can get. So I was quite happy to settle down for the evening. To give you the context, at the end of February, we're typically about 60–70% through filming, and in 2020 we were about 70–80% through the filming of the Super Garden TV series. It was all set in a new social housing scheme near St Margaret's at the back of Dublin Airport, and it was already clear that we had the makings of the best Super Garden TV series in 12 years. At the end of February, we're also fairly well advanced on sponsorship. We've confirmed about €1 million worth of show gardens for Bloom 2020. And I'd say it's safe to say we were on track to deliver the biggest and best Bloom show in 14 years. However, that evening in Santry, I got a call from a very good friend, a Chinese friend now living in Dublin, but he still has family living near to Wuhan. And he told me that despite the spread of COVID in China, his wife and family will be moving back to China from Dublin in the coming weeks, or as soon as humanly possible. His contention was that the Chinese government would take all the actions necessary to prevent the spread of the coronavirus in order to safeguard the Chinese economy. But he didn't believe that our European fondness for civil liberties would be conducive to making the tough decisions that will be required in order to deal with COVID on this side of the world. So he certainly felt that Ireland and Europe were in big trouble, and it was hard not to take him seriously. After hours of discussion that evening and a full day of reflection on Sunday, I was clear on what I personally wanted to do. Number one, to alert my family and close friends to the seriousness of what was coming down the tracks, and I can tell you not many wanted to listen. Number two, to prepare for a total lockdown and possible shortages. So I wanted to make sure we had supplies of food and fuel. Not only did I stock up on toilet roll, I even went as far as getting the septic tank serviced. and I filled the oil tank and bought gas canisters for the camping stove in the event that we lost heat and power. And number 3, from a work perspective, I wanted to start the conversation around the cancellation of Bloom. With significant amounts of money and energy already committed, I wanted to limit any further expenditure, limit the damage, and maintain good working relationships. And again, not many wanted to listen to that conversation in early March. The following week, I was scheduled to present awards at a ceremony to landscape contractors in Dublin at the Convention Centre. And when the organisers decided to proceed against my advice, I insisted from the podium that there should be no shaking of hands, no kisses or hugs, or no group photos. And in my address to them, I urged the business leaders present to start to prepare for a challenging year. Again, I could sense that not many wanted to listen to me. So on the 24th of March, Bloom was finally officially cancelled. The country went into full lockdown on the 27th of March. Hundreds and hundreds of conversations had taken place behind closed doors over that 1 month period, including discussions with the most senior officials and politicians in the country, down to the smallest nursery owners and caterers, who did not want us to jeopardise the €10 million that is spent at Bloom each year, or indeed the €40 million of spend that is generated in post-event sales. So lesson number 1 for me, my first R, is resistance. And it's all about resistance and resistance to change. It should never be underestimated. Major change requires major energy. It is a law of physics, I'm sure, but it should also be a law in business. No matter how compelling the evidence, change causes stress, and we are programmed to stay in the comfort zone. Even though I wrote my business master's thesis on the management of change here in WIT about 10 years ago, I still had no appreciation of the strength with which individuals and businesses cling to the familiar, not until 2020. So that's my first R, resistance and resistance to change. Lesson 2 and 3 for me were about reflection and reframing. Reflect and reframe. I always remember the story told in a marketing class, probably in the late 80s, about one of the big petrochemical companies making the decision to reframe and rebrand their business. They were becoming an energy provider rather than a provider of fossil-based fuels. They could see the writing on the wall, and they recognized the need to invest in renewables in order to future-proof their business and profits. This year, I reminded my colleagues on the Bloom management team that we are not in event management business. We may run one of the biggest events in the Irish calendar, and we may need to be experts in event management, but in actual fact, we are in the business of educating and inspiring the Irish public around plants and gardening. Food and drink is also important to us in Board Beer, and I'm sure you know, but at Bloom, horticulture is at the heart of what we do, and we need to always follow our heart. When Bloom's cancellation was accepted by all and sundry at the end of March, we could finally turn our attention to alternative ways of engaging with the public. And this was an exciting opportunity to pivot, my favorite word of 2020. And very quickly, we devised a #BloomAtHome digital campaign. We went on to run a TV and radio ad campaign to appeal to all those workers who were stuck at home looking out at a garden wasteland, and we doubled the length of the Super Garden TV series to 6 one-hour programs. RTE were delighted, of course, as they were desperate for content to fill the spots left behind all the cancelled soaps. We ran a major #BloomAtHome campaign with RTE across radio, TV, and digital. It wasn't an event nor anything like an event, but it aligned to our objectives and our KPIs. In addition to many families and individuals rediscovering their gardens after years of neglect, we helped an additional 165,000 new households discover the joys and benefits of gardening for the very first time. Lesson 4, reconnect, another great R. Stay connected with the team. This was the biggest surprise for me in 2020. I've always liked working from home, always happy to avoid the early train to Dublin from Plunkett Station, always happy to have the space and time to walk on the beach in Woodstown. And while I knew intellectually and intuitively that daily connection with other humans was important, I had not ever felt lonely or depressed from lack of contact, and I had not realized the importance of all the pre and post meeting banter that happens in the real world. In a world of video conferencing, regular catch-up meetings with extra time allowed for small talk are key. As a team leader with an agenda and a to-do list, it's easy to forget that for many working from home, this online call may be the closest that participants have to human connection that day. Not everyone has another adult at home with whom they can shoot the breeze or analyze the latest COVID numbers, or indeed sample the banana bread or make a hearty winter soup. If humour started with an R, I would also include it in here. Life was already too serious before COVID struck. Creativity and productivity is maximised when a good laugh has softened some of the worries and fears that are currently inescapable. My fifth R is resilience. At the end of Christmas 2019, on St. Stephen's Day, I started a 10-day silent meditation retreat in a boarding school in Dundalk. Needless to say, there were some raised eyebrows at home. It was probably the most extreme mental health intervention that I'd ever undertaken, and it was great, profoundly interesting. And in January and February, I felt really well prepared for the year ahead and confident that I could meet any challenge head on. However, it wasn't enough to keep my spirits high in March and April. Ironically, during the first lockdown, I found myself talking to the media on a regular basis about the many benefits of gardening for both physical and mental health. Exercise, using the green gym, the clean, safe air, the benefits of sunlight and vitamin D, the connection to nature, the sense of accomplishment and control that is achievable in your own safe, private plot. And during the summer, I was invited to join the board of the Sanctuary, a charity set up by Sister Stan Kennedy in Dublin that provides access to indoor and outdoor green space for individuals and organisations that need space and support for meditation or mindfulness. And in order to better understand their work, I took on a part-time online mindfulness teacher training course, which I completed there on the 5th of January. So I seem to have become immersed in this area during 2020. And what has become very clear to me is that we need to keep ourselves and our teams resilient every day. A 10-day or indeed a 30-day course won't cut it. There will be more changes and more shocks in future months and years. And when you examine the requirements for resilience, you recognize that we can actually maintain our readiness for change and our ability to resurge. The Mental Health Association of Ireland lists 5 ways for well-being on its website, and I would recommend this as a great guide for building and maintaining resilience. I'd go as far as suggesting that business leaders and team leaders incorporate these recommendations into their targets and their objectives for 2021. So in summary, my 5 R's include dealing with resistance to change. Remember that it takes time and energy to bring about change. Review, reframing, getting to the heart of what you as an individual and what your business or mission is all about. If you don't do this, you'll make yourself dizzy with pivots and repivots. Reconnecting, and that's really about relationships. Remember that we achieve much more as a team, and we need to bring our team along with us. And we will need them to take advantage of the opportunities post-COVID. And maintaining resilience and topping up that resilience tank every day. So I hope that this has been useful, and I look forward to hearing their perspectives of others. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Mary, and thanks, David. There were 3 fantastic videos. We're running out of time, believe it or not. That happens when you're trying to do something live and things go a little bit crazy as regards sound, etc. So what I'm just going to do now, it's not so much a workshop as planned. I just want you to have a little think about the 3 sessions you've heard there. Now they're all fabulous in their own, they're all completely different. And just if you could put into the chat box anything that comes up to you, we'll give it a minute to throw up any ideas that come up for you from those last 3 sessions. And then if you have other ideas, because we are running out of time, if you can send them on to me at fearghal@atpo.online, and I'll bring them all back together and send them all back to you. So have a go at that now. If you can just fill up the chat box with whatever you think you have ideas from the last 3 speakers. We'll give it another about 30 seconds, and then I just might read a few. Okay, I'm just going to pick out a few. There's an interesting one there. Unforeseen events will become more of the norm. And Kieran, you fill that one in. What were you thinking about there, Kieran?
Hello, everyone. Well, the technology and the pandemic and the pace of life, I think that I just don't think that things that happened in over a period of 10 years in the past are going to happen over a period of 3 to 4 years now. So events are going to seem more exaggerated as we go forward and more accelerated. We've got to be prepared for that as a norm.
Okay, thanks, Kieran. We see one here there from Anya McCarthy. Cinema experience, but through the theatre. Pick a live concert. The audience can choose from a list at home on a Saturday, just like going to the cinema, but you want live music instead. Anya, what were you thinking of there?
Yeah, on a Saturday night here at home, we sit down and say, right, we set up the room as a theatre. Like I watched some of the theatre rooms that Mary had already put out there. And it was lovely just to sit down to a glass of wine as if you're in the theatre, dim the lights, light all the candles and watch. But it'd be great to have a live listen to what I watched tonight. And I'd pick my and all come out through the theatre, and you support the local, you supporting your own people, and it's a lovely night out in.
Absolutely, that sounds good. Okay, Sinead, reflection and reframing are very important for us all. Allow yourself time to do this as often as necessary. What were you thinking there, Sinead?
Hi, Fearghal. Hi, everybody. Just that we seem to be, like the swan on the water, and we're all, calm and lovely on the Zoom. And I think, a lot of people are, regardless of whether they're in their BJ bottoms or not, but many of the legs are going, under the desk. And I think it really is important that, when you're 12 months into this now, it's time to reflect and it's time to change. And many of us don't allow ourselves the time, to be in the present, to be in the moment, to take time and think about ourselves. Yes, we've got the children, partners, family, all the other concerns. But I think if we don't look after number one, we can't look after everybody else. And I think it is timely when we can to take a little moment for ourselves. Just a little bit of reflection, a little bit of reframing, and maybe changing something that would bring us more pleasure going forward.
Thanks a million. I'll keep my pajamas on me just for the next minutes. Okay, I'm just going to get on to say thanks to our speakers, Mary Boland, Gary Graham, Sean Brady, David McNamara, and Michael Kelly. And we might give them a round of applause if you want to demute for just a second, if you wish, and just give them the real thing, because they were absolutely brilliant. It's actually super. And Very good. Waterford Chamber, just want to really thank them for partnering with ourselves for this event. Gerald Hurley, Linda Lawton, Michael Line, who did the design, Brian Hurley, the engineer, who saved us about 5 times today. Thank you, Brian, particularly. And they deserve a round of applause as well, you know, because really they've done a fantastic job. Well done to them all. So we're just going to do one more activity because basically I've had to get rid of a few for the time. And this one is so low tech, anybody could do it, even whether you're in your pajamas or you're not in your pajamas. This is so doable. And really, it's to do with it's called hand height pole. Sounds very incredibly difficult, but it's not that hard. So if you raise your hands up fully, that means you fully agree with what statement I'm going to make. If you half raise them, that means you kind of half agree. And if you don't raise them at all, you don't agree at all. So we could just practice that one on. We just say the weather in Ireland is very messy. So if you agree with that statement, you can raise your hands fully just to practice that we all got that. How about that? Okay, I think we all agree on that one. Okay, so here we go. Here's my statement. I think the speakers today have given us some fabulous ideas on resurgence possibilities, and they deserve really so much thanks today from all of us. Do we all agree with that? I think we do. So that's good enough for me to see. I've really enjoyed hosting this session. Hope it can lead to great things for Ireland, for Waterford, for Ireland, and for Chicago, Tracy, and for other places. Don't forget, if you have any other ideas you want to share, just send them to me at fearghaloneill@atpo.online, and I'm going to bring them all together. So at this stage, I'm going to say stay safe and goodbye for now, and take care. And we're good. Take care now.
Bye.
All the best.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ferg. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Fearghal.
Take care. Take care, Sean. Thanks.
Bye.
All the best.
Thanks, Fearghal. Bye.
Thank you. All the best, Michael. Take care. Take care, lads. Bye, Jared. Take care. And take care, Sinead and Tracy. I didn't hear you talking, Tracy, but it's good to see you're there. And all the best now, Brian, and or all the best now, Jared. I'll see you later, and take care.
See you soon, Fearghal.
All the best. All the best.
See you, Fearghal.
All the best, Jared.